Welcome to Midnight, a podcast for creepypastas and urban legends. We hope you enjoy these tales of horror, but beware, viewer discretion is advised. My Roommate Changed by Rin Ryder. Let me start this whole thing by saying that I'm going to university in Germany. I'm living in the dorms here, but they're a little different from the ones you might typically think of. They're more like flats that are shared by multiple people. Some can have up to 8 people living together, others like mine are only limited to 3. Ever since I moved in, I had good luck that I shared this place with only one other roommate. The flat was in one of the older buildings, and since a number of the students had gone back in the past years, not many people wanted to stay here. Well, the building was pretty old, and the place really isn't the nicest. And to tell you the truth, it's a little further off campus. Hey, but on the upside, the rent's really cheap. My roommate Chris was a pretty awesome guy and a first-year student as well. I mean, I wouldn't call us best friends, but we got along pretty well. We'd often hang out and get drunk and go to parties and have people over. Life was actually pretty damn good that first semester. University work wasn't too tough. I only needed to pass a couple exams. Things changed when the second semester started, though. When I returned from my semester break, Chris was already back, but he was behaving rather strangely. I had brought some beers back to celebrate the beginning of our second semester, but he didn't welcome me back and simply went along with his business as usual. I was pretty pissed at him, but I assumed he was either preparing for the new semester or had to finish up some work before the classes started. I knew his first semester had been tougher than what mine was, or maybe he was just in a bad mood. For whatever reason, I shrugged it off for the time being. Things had gotten a little better since the second semester started, but overall he seemed disinterested and almost spaced out at times. His way of speaking and his voice were almost too monotonous. It was really weird considering how well we'd gotten along before. Whenever I'd ask him if something went wrong, he'd either give me a one-word answer or he'd just ignore me completely. I even went out of my way to ask him if he'd come to the semester opening party with me, but I was ignored again. This was absolutely not like him. But by that point, I had enough and simply told myself, screw him, I'm going to go have some fun. The party was pretty amazing. It was a typical opening party, meaning I ended up pretty drunk and I didn't return home until the early morning. It took me a while to unlock the door, but when I opened it, I saw a dark figure at the end of the hallway. It was Chris. I realized that after a while. He was just standing there, looking at me in the dark. Before I turned the lights on, I told him to go fuck himself and take his creepy ass back to bed. When I thought about it the next day, I couldn't help but feel a little weirded out. I told myself that Chris probably just woke up from the noise of me trying to flutter with the locks because I was so drunk. Or maybe he just needed to go use the loo. I still couldn't help but to feel there was something off about it. I didn't see Chris for most of the day. He returned in the late evening. The clothes he was wearing, though, were so weird. It wasn't his outfit per se, but it was weird for him. Chris was the type of guy who always worried about his impression that he made on others. So seeing him come back home in sweatpants and a worn-out t-shirt made me raise my eyebrows a little bit. I looked at him and I wanted to ask him about it, but he walked right past me, treating me as if I was air again. I started to get upset. I reached out for his shoulder to confront him about his behavior, but before I could even touch him, he turned around and looked at me straight in the eyes. I froze up for a second. There was complete silence. "Something wrong?" he asked me. The voice was toneless and empty as before. It sounded somewhat wrong and strange, as if certain vowels were a little too drawn out. I answered with a no, and he turned around right away and went back to his room. When the door closed, I started breathing again. Something was seriously wrong with him. This happened yesterday. Tonight I spent most of the evening talking to some old friends via Skype. We just hung out, played some games together. I don't see them often, and it was a really nice way to catch up and spend the evening. It was about midnight when we ended the call. It was at that time that I had to go to the loo. As I opened the door, I stepped outside and saw him. There was my roommate, Chris, standing in the dark at the end of the hallway, simply looking at me. He was absolutely still, almost as if he was frozen. It was the same thing that had happened when I came home from the party, only this time I'm sober. I saw his eyes resting on me. His head was tilted to one side, almost at a 90-degree angle. The whole way he carried himself was just wrong. It looked as if he had too many bones and joints in his body. He was leaning forward a little into my direction, as if he were lying in wait for me. Stop that shit! Okay, man, what's your problem? Are you trying to fuck with me? Again, I got no reply. I had only taken a few steps when his head moved to the other side. His mouth opened for a moment, but there was no sound. A few seconds later, I heard a voice. It wasn't his voice. It was someone else's voice coming out of his mouth.
Hey, come here.
It was only those few words before it changed back to the monotonous version of his, and he continued, "There's something I want to show you." It was enough to freak me out. I went back into my room and locked the door. For a moment, it was a completely different voice. That wasn't Chris at all. That wasn't even Chris imitating a different voice. What the fuck? The voice I heard at first was high-pitched like that of a girl. Only after the first couple words did it adjust back to the monotonous version of Chris that I know. What the hell was this? I stayed up all night after that. There was no way I was going to be able to go back to sleep. My friends were offline, so I couldn't talk to them. I expected Chris to bang against my door any moment and tell me something. But everything was quiet. After a long while, I got up and took a look through the keyhole to check to see what was outside, or if he was standing in front of the door. But there was nothing. Sleep wouldn't come, and I could see myself staying up all night after this. So I decided to have a look at some of my emails to kill some time. Most of it was bullshit. Newsletters, welcome emails. But there was one from the student union. The email told me that they were planning on relocating some of the students since I was living in this flat by myself. They're planning on moving me to a different. What did they mean? Living here alone? That made no sense. Chris was right here. I mean, he was behaving weirdly. Maybe it's because he was staying here without permission and trying to keep a low profile. If so, that would explain some of his behavior. But what about that voice? I mean, it's not my fault he'd been thrown out. Why is he messing with me? It hit me in that one exact moment. With shivering hands, I reached for my phone. It was just a random thought. I, I prayed that I was just being paranoid or imagining things. So I dialed Chris's number, and I was expecting to hear the phone ring on the other side of the apartment, or hear him answer from the hallway. It rang for quite some time before someone answered. It was Chris. But there was loud music playing, and I didn't understand a word he was saying. After a while, the music was gone. Hey, sorry, man. Things are pretty loud here. I didn't get to call you yet, but you got my email, right? What are you talking about, Chris? The email about me transferring to Humboldt University of Berlin? What what are you talking? Stop joking around. Man, you missing me that much already? Can't handle living alone? Dude, stop fucking around. This shit isn't fucking funny. Tell me right now that you're outside in the hallway. Hey, mate, what's going on over there? It was right at that moment that I heard his voice from the hallway as well. It was the same voice, not only coming from the phone, but from outside. Something is wrong. Come out and help me. In sheer shock, my phone slipped out of my hands and crashed down onto the floor. It was an old piece of shit, and as luck would have it, I dropped it one too many times, and it just was dead now. And outside, that voice continued talking. Come out. See what's wrong. The tone of the voice had changed to be more decisive than before. I'm writing this down to keep myself calm. The voice is getting louder. It's right outside my door now. I have no way out. The apartment's on the 7th floor, so the window's not an option for me. I really don't know what's going to happen. There's just this one thing I want to know. What the hell have I been sharing this place with for all these weeks? I hope you enjoyed this episode of Midnight. Please subscribe so you can get all of our content. And if there's a story that you'd like to hear, please visit our website, paranormalityradio.com, and send us a message. There'll be a link in the description. Until next time.